Hello, friends, and thanks for checking out another edition of the Bleed Los podcast. This podcast is brought to you by our good friends at FOCO, FOCO.com, FOCO. For being a loyal listener to this podcast, if you go to the description below, that in whatever platform that you're listening to this podcast on, there's going to be a unique link. Hell of a tongue twister right there. That if you click on that, it'll take you over to FOCO's website, and whatever it is that you want from them, whether it's maybe you want a Hawaiian beach shirt for your upcoming Hawaiian vacation, assuming you're going there. Another bobblehead. I just received my World Series Dodger Dog bobblehead. Super stoked about that. Maybe you want some slides. I have a lot of slides, and I'd be into buying some from the Dodgers. And Foco.com has them, right? So if you use that link, add whatever you want to your cart for being a loyal listener to this here podcast, you will save up to 10% on your purchase. And as always, terms and conditions do apply. Please see their website for more details. But huge thanks for FOCO for supporting our podcast and for the consideration. Again, FOCO.com. Check them out. And as always, brought to you by our good friends at Bleed Los. BleedLos.com. So they have all the Dodgers fandom, right? At Culichi merch, Joe Kelly merch, and if you heard the news about Joe this week, talked about his surgery. Well, you can send him some good vibes by acquiring a Joe Kelly Fight Club shirt from BleedLos.com. For being a loyal listener to this podcast, if you use the promo code BleedLosPod, you will save 10% on your purchase on BleedLos.com. Again, terms and conditions do apply. Please see their website for more details. But BleedLos.com, huge thanks to them. And lastly, thank you, the listener to this here podcast, for supporting us, for listening to us, following us on the internet, all that jazz. We really, really appreciate it. It means a ton to us. So thank you for the support. And if this is your first time listening and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Follow us on Spotify. Subscribe to us on Google Play or Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you can get your hands on it, please subscribe. So huge shout out to all of you, because if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't do this every week. So thank you. But on that note, here is another edition of the Bleed Los podcast. And it's your boys Alonso y Juan with the babyface gimmick voice in the sky, Roger. I want to start with you, Juan. It's been a bit of a troubling week. How obviously the Dodgers salvaged a victory today. Excuse me, and a couple days ago they salvaged a what was it, 8-0, if I'm not mistaken, win the other day as well. And by the way, today was against the Brewers. We'll talk about that game here in a second. But how are you feeling overall after this troublesome week?
I'm feeling that someone drank Joe Boo's rum, and we still don't have an answer to who drank Joe Boo's rum. Like the way this week went, you know what's the most frustrating thing? Obviously, the Dodgers are slumping. I think it makes it worse that the Dodgers are in every single game. I've said this before, where it's like, oh, I would much rather see my team get blown out than lose these one-run games. And that's, Roger mentioned this off air, but the Dodgers went 2-5 this week. A couple of things go their way. They have a good week. The week before was the first time they had a losing record, right? So now again, this is now the second week they have another losing record again. And the key is to win series. If they would have won series, continue to win series, they would have put a lot of distance between themselves and the rest of the teams in the National League West. But because they're slumping, because they're dealing with the injuries, At the end of this week, the Dodgers are in second place. At the end of last week, they were still in first, hanging by a thread, but now they're in second place, and they're only a half a game out. It's May 2nd. They have all these injuries, they're slumping, and they're a half a game out. Again, to take a page out of Aaron Rodgers' book, relax, everybody. We're okay. At least right now, we're okay. If this slump starts to continue, this is a new month. If this slump starts to continue and the whole month of May we're like this, and come June, we're still struggling to get hits, then I think now we're gonna it's time to worry. Right now, I think, and you've mentioned this, Alonzo, as Dodger fans, we have been spoiled a lot. I think this is very new for us Dodger fans to watch this team find a new way to lose a game every single day. So we just need to be patient. Once again, there's 162 games in a baseball season. The season's not over yet. It is May 2nd. So right now, the only thing I have to say to you is who drank Joe Boo's rum, and watching some of these games is really, really tough, especially Saturday night's game against the Brewers. That was a tough one.
Well, and if we're being 100% honest, I feel like all these games, even though obviously they only took 2 wins out of those, I still think they were very winnable games. They're still putting the balls in play. There's obviously still mistakes happening, injuries. We'll get into that in a second. But all things considered, obviously could there be alarm bells, a whistling, etc. Yeah, but like you said, it's May 2nd, so I'm not overly worried necessarily because they're still seeing the ball well. The thing for me that stood out today is that you got 7+ RBIs from your 6 and 7 spot guys with AJ Pollock and Matt Beatty, which means that they were able to have solid at bats to get the bases loaded prior to each of those at bats, right? So that for me is a huge indicator that they're starting to right the ship. As Joel Embiid said, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, a few years ago, you got to trust the process. And the Dodgers players, excuse me, have talked, kind of profusely about the process. Showing up to the ballpark, putting in the work, doing the reps, etc. And it's showing that it's it's starting to turn things around. Because today, obviously they opened that game up right away, but it's one of those things where they're trying to get back in a groove, and then to add insult to injury, no pun intended, you lose guys here and there. So all things considered, this could be a lot worse. We talked about it a little bit off air. I feel like some of these injuries, if they happen to any other team, that would be the end of their season, right? If I'm not going to say any teams, but just as an example, if a team had a Corey Knebel type as either their setup or their closer, and that was it, he's done for a few months or the year, that's it for the bullpen, right? So the Dodgers are still super lucky that they have flexibility to be able to make stuff work. Now their depth is being tested a little bit with injuries to the pitching side of the ball. But Belly's coming back, and obviously that's great. But it's the pitching side is what's going to be affected the most. So I'm kind of curious, as you guys all know, Dustin May went down. Hopefully it's nothing serious. He's going to have an MRI Monday the 3rd in Los Angeles. If Dustin May is out for the season, and obviously we're not putting that into fruition, I'm knocking on wood as we speak. But if he's done for the year, would that raise those alarm bells for you, or what would your thinking be at that point?
Honestly, for me, I don't think he's, as good as Dustin May is, and he's very promising, and I'm very high on him. It wouldn't be alarm bells for me because technically he's our 5th starter. You got 4 other guys there, and because he's your 5th starter, and the way the schedule is coming up in the next couple of weeks, they probably would have skipped him anyways. So right now, I don't think it's going to be the sky is falling. If Dustin May, we lose him for the whole season, only because there's reports that Gonsolin might be ready to go in about 3 to 4 weeks. And Gonsolin is a guy that I think is a great guy to have during a regular season. He's a guy that's going to, be able to give you innings and keep you in games. And you might win games that you had no business winning. So the Dustin May injury, it doesn't worry me. If it ends up being Tommy John, the only thing that concerns me is we're going to lose him for a year, and it might push back his development. So I'd hate to see that happen with him. But that injury doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't make me panic or anything like that. It's just right now the overwhelming rash of injuries, because not only is it Dustin May, we still don't know what's going on with Brusdar. We don't know his forearm tightness. We don't know if that's going to develop to end up being something worse, and then we're going to end up losing Brusdar. There's reports that Joe Kelly's going to be back this month. The Dodgers did a really good job of keeping this a secret, but Joe Kelly had surgery. How's Joe Kelly going to pitch coming back from surgery? I mean, Joe Kelly was already a question mark every time you throw him out there, because sometimes he was just very effectively wild. Who knows? Maybe, we were wondering all last year why Joe Kelly was using his curveball so much. Maybe now having this surgery, it'll free him up and he'll be throwing that great fastball that he has. So there's just too many variables right now for the Dodgers to really figure out what's going on. I think what this next month, hopefully what'll happen in this next month is we've identified where there's weaknesses, which is the bullpen and which is the offense. And right now, hopefully we have in-house solutions to those problems. If we don't, by the end of this month, have in-house solutions, I think starting in June, you're going to start to see the Dodgers start to look to maybe make some trades, make some acquisitions to address these holes.
Well, and the Joe Kelly thing, by the way, is interesting, because it sounds like, from what I read on it, they found some cysts, and that that his shoulder hasn't really been great since the end of 2019. And that during his suspension, after the thing with the Astros, that his arm was super weak, and he was having issues that basically he couldn't lift his arm past any sort of gravity. And apparently they'd asked him how long it was going on for, and he told them that forever, that he couldn't sleep, and it felt like fire ants were eating his arm from inside out. So that's aggressive. But the fact that he was pitching through that is impressive all on its own too. I'm hoping that with the Brusdar thing, because obviously they don't know, I'm hopeful for all those guys, Dustin, Brusdar, that it doesn't turn into a Tommy John situation. Because like you said, it's going to affect their development, and it's a year out that, that goes. But all points with Tony are showing that Tony will be back sooner rather than later, which is the move, which is obviously where they want to go. Now, as we kind of, look at some other injuries, Zach McKinstry went down, was placed on the IL, and obviously that's a big hit. As Roger's been calling him in our group text, the rookie of the year, has gone down, especially because he was kind of the spark to the offense. But with everything that's kind of been going on as far as the lack of offense or what have you, after today's game specifically, how do you feel now, kind of going into this next week of games, given what happened the last week?
And this is to your point, where there are some players that are starting to show signs that they're breaking out of their funks and they're starting to hit better. I mean, raise your hand if you had Matt Beatty as the Dodgers' hottest hitter. Matt Beatty is 15 for his last 23. So obviously something happened when they went down and they sent him down to that Arizona camp. I forget what are they calling it now? The alternate training site?
Alternate site, yeah.
Yeah, the alternate site. Yes, and to let all our listeners know, I have received the cease and desist letter for the Matt Beatty slander. So for now, I will no longer be slandering Matt Beatty. For those loyal listeners who've been listening to the show on a consistent basis, know that there was a lot of Matt Beatty slander on this show. Well, the cease and desist has been received, and Matt Beatty right now, he's hitting over 600, since he's come up from, he's hitting 652 since he's come back from the alternate site. So whatever he worked on, whatever he did on there worked, and it's been great for the Dodgers. Matt Beatty had 7 RBIs today. So Matt Beatty's hot. Chris Taylor, and I know you've talked about this, Alonzo. You thought he was very important. You last episode, actually, and this is where we give you your point. For those of you who don't know, we like to give each other, we like to keep score, and Alonzo gets a point here where he predicted that we needed a big week from Chris Taylor, and Chris Taylor has provided that. Chris Taylor's 11 for his last 30. So he's up there. He's putting up numbers. AJ Pollock, the guy who, at least for me and maybe a lot of Dodger fans, he is the forgotten player on this team because there's so many stars on this team. I think you tend to forget about AJ Pollock. AJ Pollock is 12 for his last 36. He's starting to heat up. He had 2 home runs today, a grand slam, a 3-run bomb. All of a sudden, he's got 4 home runs. He doubled up the amount of RBIs that he had on the season. He went from 7 RBIs to 15 RBIs today because he had 8 RBIs today. Very close to tying a Dodger record that was with does anybody know this? Does anybody get points for knowing who holds the record for most RBIs in a game for the Dodgers?
I feel like I know the name, and the name escapes me at the moment.
I'm sure Babyface knows. Babyface, do you know?
Gil Hodges.
That is correct, Gil Hodges. But there's Hodges? Another player that it's Hodges, but he's tied with another player.
Beltre?
Nope.
That's a good guess. Matt Beatty.
Nope. It is James Loney. For those loyal Dodger fans, if you remember that, James Loney had 9 RBIs in a game. So when you mentioned this, Alonzo, when you have the bottom of the lineup is starting to hit like this, they're picking up the slack for our stars who right now are struggling. Mookie Betts is 9 for his last 44. Corey Seager is 9 for his last 42. Even Justin Turner has cooled down a bit. He's 10 for his last 42. So those are our main guys right now. If those guys would be maybe doing a little more to carry their weight, who knows? Maybe the Dodgers do end up winning 4 out of 7 this week because all these games were winnable. Will Smith is starting to look. I think there was a combination there where I think Will Smith he had a lot of bad luck. I felt Will Smith was hitting the ball hard, but he was just hitting it right at somebody. But now the ball's starting to fall for him. He had a triple on Saturday. I mean, Will Smith is 6 for his last 22. So there are signs that I think these guys are starting to break out of it. It's just right now, I feel like we've talked about this. The Dodgers have been in every game. I don't know how many 1-run loss games they had this week, but it was because they didn't execute that they ended up losing the game. If they make the small little plays, it turns things around, and the Dodgers are probably still on top of this division. So that's why I don't think it's all doom and gloom. The Dodgers have survived this funk that they're in, and hopefully next week with series against the Cubs and the Angels, they break out of it and they get, back on track because they're going to have Arizona pretty soon, who's red hot all of a sudden out of nowhere. I mean, there's 4 teams in this division that are only separated by 2 games. So the competition is up there, and the Dodgers I think the Dodgers are beating themselves right now.
Well, and real quick too, by the way, the other guest that I was going to say was Sean Green, but I had a stat that was stuck in my head that AJ Pollock is the first player in Dodgers history to have 7 RBI in a game since Matt Beatty, who also has 7 RBI in that game. Credit to Blake Harris for that stat, but it's one of those things though too where if the bottom half of the lineup is starting to do what they need to do, like you said, Juan. Obviously the top of the lineup needs to do what they need to do. And I feel like today they started that because obviously that's how they got those grand slams. And the crazy thing about the grand slam thing is that the Dodgers hadn't had a multi grand slam game since 2000, and they had 2 in 2 innings today. So that's nuts. And obviously we'll take it at this point. We need that offense. We need to get the offense going. And like you said, we need to get Mookie going. We need to get Corey going. And then obviously, the
Also,
looming. What was that?
Pollock had eight
Well, right. But I'm just
RBIs today. Yeah.
as far as like the timeline went, is that's how Blake
Oh.
did it. But as far as damn it, babyface, you've thrown me for a loop.
You
I forgot
totally
else.
killed his mojo. He was on a roll, babyface. God, you
But-
really are Eddie Mush. For all those Bronx
I
tail
did- I did-
fans that we have our own Eddie Mush on the show, and it's babyface.
I didn't want to short him with that one RBI in his big day. So
You didn't want to jip him out of the one.
no.
Actually, you know what? Real quick, we haven't asked you. Speaking doom and gloom, skies falling, all that good stuff. How are you feeling, Roger?
Could have been a better week,
There it is.
but I think, salvaging the game today they had to have, and like we mentioned, they had to beat up on this pitcher and catcher duel. First game that they had basically, played together. First game, back up for their starting pitcher, and first game for their catcher. So they had to hit today. So, and we saw it, and hopefully that carries over, going into Chicago tomorrow. So let's see what happens tomorrow.
You sound super optimistic. I wish that this podcast is a video sometimes, just so people could see some of his reactions, because that's one of them. One thing too, real quick, aside from the Chris Taylor thing you were saying a minute ago, I will gladly take my point, by the way. The dude that was like runner up for me that I thought needed to have a big week was Julio Diaz, and my man had a great week, and he had a great game today. I mean, 7 innings. Well, he went on 7 innings, didn't give up any runs, had 10 strikeouts, if I'm not mistaken, was the line. Like, what more do you want out of your guy? He won 7 innings, and he was able to to kind of just be in a role, and that's what you needed out of your starting pitching. I mean, that's the other thing too. Starting aside from Dustin May going down, the starting pitching hasn't been terrible either. It's just the issue has been the lack of offense, going into all these games, because all these games the Dodgers were in all those games, like you said, Juan. They just they couldn't get the offense going. And so, I mean, for me, I look at it as a glimmer of hope, especially considering that it's not all, like you said, doom and gloom and the sky is falling and whatever. But I mean, for them to be able to kind of, I feel like today's game was the game that they needed to kind of kickstart things, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely, and you're right. I mean, Julio Diaz quietly, because I don't know if anybody's really paying. He is 4-0 this year. He's 4-0 with a 2.87 ERA, and he is striking out a lot. I mean, I think this is the second time now that he's had double-digit strikeouts in a game. So Julio Diaz he's really having a nice season, so to speak. He had that little shaky start this week against the Reds, where, I mean, he was really just 1 inning, and it was because of control issues. He had a very high pitch count. He was in the 80s by like the 5th inning. So, but today I think Julio did a great job in the sense that he picked up the bullpen. He gave the Dodgers length. He pitched 7 innings today and gave up 1 run. It was just 1 mistake to Nottingham, who hit a shot off of him. But other than that, I mean, he was great. He was out there throwing strikes. He had a lead. He didn't try to get too cute. He just went out there and he went after the Brewers. So, I mean, you can't say enough about this starting pitching. I mean, Clayton Kershaw, his ERA is 2.09. He pitched a gem on Wednesday against the Reds. And I got to tell you, I'm a little surprised by that, because I really thought that Kershaw would be coming back to the pack, that Kershaw would be that we would have to settle to seeing a lesser version of Kershaw, that Kershaw getting up in age would be maybe a mediocre pitcher. But he's really surprised me as to the start of his season, how well he's been pitching. And he was great earlier this week. Trevor Bauer got his first loss of the season, but Trevor Bauer did something huge. Could you imagine if Trevor Bauer didn't go those 8 innings on Friday night, where the Dodgers bullpen would be by the end of this series in Milwaukee? He was just a victim. He got no run support, Walker Buehler had a very shaky start against the Reds because that was a very winnable game. The Dodgers gave Walker Buehler the lead. I mean, you tell me you score 5 runs for Walker Buehler. I'm sorry. I'm thinking that's a win for the Dodgers because there's no way that Walker Buehler is gonna give up. And he struggled that game. Every time the Dodgers gave him a lead, Walker Buehler gave it right back up. But that being said, that poor outing that he had against the Reds, his ERA ballooned up to 3.16. So to be critical of the Dodgers starting pitching, I think is really unfair. The Dodgers starting pitching is what's carrying this team. Who knows where this team would be if the starting pitching wasn't that great. And to tell you the truth, the only thing that sucks, not only watching the Dodgers slump this week and have them struggle, is I am unable to partake of the Jumbo Jack celebrations because for some reason it's only participating Jumbo Jacks Jack in the Box in LA. And it seems every Jack in the Box that I go to is not participating in this. Babyface, have you participated in the Jumbo Jack giveaways?
I have not, because I heard it was only LA. So I'm like, I'm out of is it LA City or LA County?
I thought it was LA County.
Well, I thought it was LA County. So I live right on the border, right? You literally, I cross the street. I'm in Orange County. I go the other direction. I'm in LA County. So I've gone to Jack in the Boxes in Whittier, and they don't know what I'm talking about. When I show them the picture on Twitter, I want my Jumbo Jack. We got 10 strikeouts last night. So that's the only thing that's adding insult to injury right now is not only are the Dodgers struggling, someone drank Joe Boo's rum, but now I can't even partake in the Jumbo Jacks that everybody else is partaking in.
I think a lot of Jack in the Box are probably doing it on purpose because they've done how many already in the first 28, 29 games, probably about half of them. So I think they're probably cutting back on purpose.
I think Jack in the Box is getting screwed on the. I don't think they anticipated the Dodgers starting pitching being this good.
That or they've heard your slander. I mean, it could be column A, column B. Hard to say. By the way, so today is
so we're going to get a cease and desist pretty soon from Jack in the Box, is what you're saying.
I'm going to be 100% honest. I'm surprised we haven't gotten more with not just Jack in the Box, just things in general. Today is the 6th time this year that a Dodger starting pitcher went 6+ innings with 10+ strikeouts. No opposing pitcher facing the Dodgers this year has accomplished that same feat. So the starting pitching, honestly, if we don't have that starting pitching, I don't even think. I mean, even right now with where we're at the end of the week, if I'm not mistaken, Roger, if you could let us know as to where the standings are in the NL West, that would be appreciated. Oh, did we lose Roger?
Well, I can tell you right now, the Dodgers are
a half game back.
The Dodgers are a half game out. They're in second. The Show Pods are a game and a half out. And the Arizona Diamondbacks, don't sleep on them. They're 2 games out, and the Rockies are 7 games out. So, it's, again, I can't stress enough to people that it's May, so this is a long season, and we just need to, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, and we already experience an up. Now we're in a little bit of a lull, but look, if this team can survive, I mean, Matt Beatty is the perfect example. Matt Beatty was struggling, and he was able to turn it around just like that. So very easily, the Dodgers can go from looking like garbage to all of a sudden going back to being world beaters.
Hey,
so
Juan,
yes, sir.
Can whatever they did with Beatty, can they do that to Rios?
Yes, I've seen that. But here's the thing, and we've talked about this on many episodes. I think everybody who's struggling should go up to Matt Beatty right now and ask them, what did they do to you down there? Rios would have been sent down if it wasn't for all these injuries. Rios is only up here right now because of the Dodgers injuries. I mean, it is struggling. I'm telling you, I was watching the game with my dad the other day, and even my dad said this is tough to watch, watching this guy hit, because not only, he's 0 for his last 18, but he's missing fastballs right down the middle. I mean, he is swinging right through him. But look, as bad as Edwin Rios has been struggling, you know who's not that far behind him? Is Max Muncy. Max Muncy's 2 for his last 39. I was surprised because every time I watch a game, all I see is Max Muncy walk. But Max Muncy is 2 for his last 39. That guy's batting average right now is just a tad a bit over 200. I think he's hitting 212. And this is a guy, I'm demanding my point right now. This was a guy that I told you guys in the beginning, I was worried about Max Muncy. Now, last year we had the excuse that Max Muncy was injured. All of a sudden, he has just fallen off, into a very bad slump. And another guy that makes me nervous is Gavin Lux. Gavin Lux is 4 for his last 39. Now, I don't know if this is Gavin Lux is he going to be the new Billy Ashley for the Dodgers, a prospect that was hyped up, or is Gavin Lux still hurt from that wrist and he's playing through it because the Dodgers need him to play through it?
I'm going to give you a point for the abstract Billy Ashley reference. That was well done. Well done.
Thank you, sir.
The crazy thing too, by the way, about AJ today, AJ Pollock, that is, he came like within a couple of feet from having 3 bombs today. I mean, so whatever he's been doing is the same with Beatty, right? Like keep it up. Because I mean that he had 8 RBIs, and by the way, the last person that knocked in 8 RBIs, do you guys know who that is?
I know Puig did 7. I don't know who did 8. Was it Sean Green?
No. Roger?
Beltre.
Ooh, no. Our good friend Adrian Gonzalez. He did it in 2016.
Oh, he didn't, yeah.
It's for me though, the sky was never falling for me. It's just more along the lines of like, okay, let's manage through this and kind of get through the pain. And a part of it is because, like Juan has said a bunch, it's only May. And if this was September, it'd be different, right? If this was September, then for sure the sky would be falling. But the other thing that my other kind of takeaway is the Dodgers quietly sucked for the last little bit. They've slumped quietly, and it didn't really get any crazy attention or anything like that, right? So again, it's so early that it's one of those deals where I'm not overly worried. I'm not concerned either. Now, if Dustin May gets hurt. And hopefully that's not the case. If he gets Tommy John, I will admit that I will be a little concerned on that end, just because I would be concerned riding 4 horses going into the postseason, assuming they make the postseason, right? So that's the concern, as you kind of look ahead or what have you through everything. But as I'm kind of curious to hear from you, Juan, of all those injuries that we know that are coming back, whether it be in the pen, whether it be on the offense. Who are you most intrigued to see, and who are you expecting to just have an instant impact right away?
We've talked a lot about injuries, and I don't want to poo-poo the injuries because I do feel that the injuries are contributing to part of the Dodgers' little struggles right now. But just to point this out, the Milwaukee Brewers, who we just played right now, the Milwaukee Brewers, who are tied with the Giants of San Francisco for the best record in the National League, have the most injuries of any team in Major League Baseball. They have 16 injuries. So we lost 3 out of 4 against the Brewers this weekend, and we didn't see Christian Yelich. We didn't see Lorenzo Cain. So, and it was funny looking at this Brewers roster. I just realized Ryan Braun is still a free agent. Ryan Braun did not sign with anyone. So I don't know if that's because Ryan Braun has the steroid label on him, and that's why people are staying away from him. I know he's no longer producing like he once was, but I was surprised to see that Ryan Braun is not only not on the Brewers, but he's not with anyone right now. In terms of the injuries, the person who I actually want to see come back is Joe Kelly, because the bullpen to me for the Dodgers is it's really shaky, and I'm worried about the bullpen just because of the amount of work that they not only got in this series. Because Dustin May went down, we had basically 2 bullpen games. But, there are a couple of guys in that bullpen that right now I think are carrying the Dodgers bullpen, are guys that are high leverage guys that we can rely on. Victor Gonzalez has been super steady. There was a couple of games there that was a little shaky, but his ERA is 2.0, is 2 right on the dot. A guy who I thought was a candidate to get sent down at the beginning of the season, I have to tip my hat to, and my apologies to Mr. Scott Alexander. Scott Alexander quietly is having a very good season for the Dodgers, and I don't know where the Dodgers bullpen would be, honestly, without him. His ERA is 2.31. Blake Trinan, he makes me very nervous because it always seems like he's pitching in traffic. But he is a guy that it seems like the Dodgers are leaning on a lot in the bullpen. Kenley Jansen, again, is up and down. And it seems like it's basically you're going to see Kenley one game and then you're not going to see him for the next game. So I think that's putting a lot of pressure on this bullpen. So I would love to see Joe Kelly come back and hopefully pitch well to try to help these guys, to try to leverage, maybe take off some of the workload from some of these other guys and at least have more options. So Joe Kelly is a guy that I really want to see how he pitches coming back from injury. Quick shout out to my boy, Jimmy Nelson. I've been rooting hard for him this year, and I know there was a lot of hate on Jimmy Nelson. But if you guys remember, Jimmy Nelson's ERA was at 7. It was over 5. Jimmy Nelson's now ERA is down to 3.75. I feel every time he's going out there, he has pitched better. Yeah, he had a couple of shaky outings, but we're going to need this guy, especially with the amount of injuries that the Dodgers have. And now Jimmy Nelson might be a candidate to actually start a few games, with the fact that, who knows how long Dustin May is going to be out. Another guy real quick, the bullpen, before I throw it over to you, Alonso, another guy that I want to see more of, because I was very encouraged by how he pitched this weekend, is Mitch White. Mitch White so far has not given up an earned run. Yes, it's a small sample size. He's only pitched 6 innings, but he almost got out of that jam on Saturday. He was put in a really, really tough position. The bases were loaded, and he almost pitched out of it. I think if Mitch White can continue to pitch like this, we might be able to survive all these injuries. And then by the time David Price comes back, we might have a full strength bullpen that might actually be what Alonso had predicted at the beginning of the year to be the best bullpen in the league.
Interesting sidebar on Ryan Braun in February, I believe it was. He was asked if, what the interest looked like for him, all that jazz, after the Brewers bought him out. And he said at that point that he wasn't currently interested in playing. So we may not see Ryan Braun again. Who knows? Because I guess he's got other, off the field interests and things like that. So they, kudos to him for setting himself up that way, if you will. For me though, injury wise, I'm expecting quite a bit from Cody Bellinger. Cody has all the tangibles when it comes to being able to be a catalyst to kind of get stuff going. And he's the kind of player too that when he's firing on all cylinders, if you stick him in any lineup, he just gets it going, right? So, that's what I'm expecting as far as from the injury side of stuff, to kind of I guess high expectations, if you will. But Mitch White, that dude has the tangibles or intangibles, I should say, to be a solid major league pitcher. And that's a pretty good compliment to anyone that wants to play in the show. because I mean the dude has a really good delivery. Like you said, he showed that he has the ability to, even though he didn't, but he has the stuff to be able to get out of a jam, and that's what you want out of a guy like that, right? So being able to kind of be thrown into into the wolves den, if you will, and to fight off as much as he did, all the credit in the world to him. He did a fantastic job, and again, right now the Dodgers are struggling, right? So you're not, if you get plugged into a situation, you may not necessarily be plugged into a high leverage situation or even a great situation. It might be super tricky, but all things considered, Mitch White handled that great. And like you said, I know it's a sample size. I know it's very small, but we know that the Dodgers are high on Mitch White. And if he can continue it that way, especially if a Dustin May goes down, because obviously Corey Knebel has been transferred to the 60-day, so there's an opportunity day there that rather for a guy like Mitch White to step up huge. Edwin Uceta, another guy that has an opportunity to step up and be huge. So it's one of those things where the injury bug unfortunately is a part of the game, and it's just affecting the Dodgers more than it I guess in normal years it would. But you said it a little bit ago, we've been super blessed for the last year and a half, where we really haven't had to deal with anything like this aside from when JT went down in, what was it, 18, I think, is when he was hurt, and he was out for kind of an extended period of time. So, again, the Dodgers, all things considered, are still managing well, and you can't complain about that. But I am curious to kind of hear your outlook on this upcoming week, because the Dodgers have 3 against the Cubs and 3 against the Angels, and 2 very different teams. The Cubs are they're struggling. They're struggling a little bit, and the Angels seem to be legit. I mean, I know I did, at least. I can't remember what you had said once, so forgive me. I had predicted that the Angels had every opportunity to win the AL West, and they're kind of showing that they can. Trout's hot, and that's one matchup I'm personally looking forward to, is Trout against this pitching staff, because Trout right now is no one can stop that man. It's not fair. So with that said, what are you looking forward to with these 2 series upcoming next week?
What I'm looking forward to is the Dodgers going back to winning series. Taking 2 out of 3 against the Cubs, taking 2 out of 3 against the Angels, I think would be great. What I would like to also see, and I want to throw this out to you guys, is the Dodgers have 2 hitting coaches, Brant Braun and Robert Van Scoyoc. I'm really curious what kind of job do you guys think these guys are doing? Because there's a lot of guys that are scuffling on this team. And no, we've talked about this before. And we talked about this on the last episode. It just seems like these guys are looking for a walk. With the exception of today, they seem to be much more aggressive today at the plate. And it might have been because the guy for the Brewers was throwing meatballs up there and the Dodgers were just jumping on it. But they looked very aggressive. So I'm curious to see if maybe the Dodgers are changing their approach at the plate. And I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think these hitting coaches? Because usually when a team struggles like this at the plate, the hitting coach is the first one to go. So what do you guys think about the Dodgers hitting coaches?
So the Dodgers are interesting in the way that they're set up. They have a game planning coach and all that jazz too that works hand in hand with the hitting coaches. So they're one of the few franchises that I don't think that they would can a hitting coach just because of an offensive slump, if that makes sense. Just because there's so many moving parts with how they're set up. However, whoever the game plan coordinator, that called today's game, they did a great job with being being a little more aggressive than they had been. I feel like, I feel like that a lot of hitting coaches in general try their best to not mess with the psyche of guys. And I also get why, though, because it's already hard enough to hit a fastball at that level, right? But then you start getting, tinkering with this, talking about that. It starts to mess with some guys, right? So, I feel like today's game, at least for me, it just felt like they kind of just went back to use something that you said a second ago, to the old meatball marinara sauce, approach. Like, ain't nothing fancy. You just got some noodles, some sauce, and some meatballs. And I feel like that's what they needed. And because there is such a thing too, also as overcoaching. Dave Roberts has obviously been roasted and flamed, as for years about overcoaching and doing the move. Because he pulls guys too soon, puts in guys for double switches that shouldn't be there, the whole bit. I feel like today's game. I mean, obviously they, having the luxury of what was it, 7 runs by the 4th inning, kind of obviously changes your outlook a little bit. But I feel like everyone needed to breathe a little bit. And I feel like that's what the Dodgers were able to do today. They were able to breathe because if you noticed the other day with Kershaw with his wonderful gem, it still felt like there was a lot of pressure on them. Whereas today, it felt like they were able to just breathe a little bit. And then after the game, they were able to reflect on that and just be like, okay, so we don't suck at this. We're just struggling right now. So that's kind of my take on it. Obviously I just gave you an answer, no answer. But the reason I did is just because there's so many moving parts with that coaching staff.
Yeah, but I mean, the funny thing is like, to me, the Dodgers very easily could have gone 4-3 this week. There were 2 games against the Reds. I mean, they ended up winning that game they could have swept the Reds. I mean, they lost an extra inning game on Monday, and it was because of their inability once again to drive in, runners on base, leaving runners on base. That game that Buehler pitched on Tuesday was another 1-run loss, where it was the inability to, they leave the bases loaded. Babyface has talked about this before. There was a perfect example, like I mentioned on Friday night. The Brewers have as many injuries, more so than the Dodgers, but the Brewers are finding ways to win games. And a perfect example was in the 8th inning. They were already winning 2-1. Colton Wong hits a double. The Brewers don't get a hit for the rest of the inning, but they scored a run because they moved the runner over to third, and then they found a way to drive him home from third while making a productive out. I don't see the Dodgers do that. I don't see the Dodgers move runners over. I don't see them doing the little things. And I wonder about their approach at the plate when you have a leadoff man at second and then you see 2 fly balls. Right, Babyface? Babyface, I know the Lakers lost. Thank you for reminding me, but I want to hear you. I want to hear you talk about this lack of execution on the base pads.
Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing it the last couple of games this week when they're getting that in the extra innings, they're getting that runner on second, and a lot of those innings that guy stays there. He doesn't even get to third for lack of a bunt, a hit to the second base side, anything, and they don't do it. And like we were talking before, I mean, again, Kershaw was in the same situation for 2 weeks in a row. He's emergency pinch hitter, 1 out. I think Seager was on third both times. And yeah, we know that Kershaw could probably pinch hit, a lot better than some of the guys that they had on the bench. But I mean, we know he could either get a hit or get a walk or something. But like I said, I'm surprised that they didn't try a squeeze with him. He's a perfect guy to try a squeeze, and I'm pretty sure he would have succeeded on probably both of the attempts to get the run in. So it's frustrating to see that they're not moving those guys over, and they're just kind of. I think once they put that guy on second, that guy has to score no matter what. Especially on last week when they were the home team and they needed that run to tie that one game. It's like, how did they not score that 1 run? I mean, it's crazy to see that they don't execute any type of steals, any type of bunts, any type of just anything, trying to get the ball hit, to the opposite side, anything.
Whose call do you think that is? Do you think that's Roberts? Is that Roberts' call to call for that squeeze in that play? Or do they already have the game plan? And Alonso had mentioned this. They have a game plan in terms of their approach to the plate. But I agree with you. The first time it happens, all right, they didn't do it. Maybe they should have squeezed. But it was the same situation that came up with Kershaw again. And again, they didn't go for it. It was 1 out. It seemed like it was the perfect time to do the squeeze. Who's making that call or who is not making that call? I mean, does Friedman tell Roberts just under no circumstances do I want you guys doing squeezes?
I mean, I think that has to be Roberts. I mean, I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be.
I don't think it'd be Friedman.
Coming from Friedman, they don't know what situations. Yeah, they don't know what situation is going to come up.
So from my understanding,
it has to. I think it has to be Roberts.
The way that they're set up, they have their game plan going into the game, and obviously, if the situation changes, they change it, right? And then from there, the coaches implement it. Obviously, we don't know what the game plan was for the Brewers because the other thing that drives me nuts, at least personally, is the Dodgers are all about matchups, and that's fine, whatever. So I don't know if that's a part of it. If obviously the lack of a bench could be a part of it too. They don't want to get anyone hurt as far as trying to force a guy over. I mean, there's so many moving parts with that right now that it could be anything. But at the end of the day, they have a game plan. They follow it. Excuse me. They implement it and they follow it along. And at the same time, a player when they're up in the box, they also could call an audible, right? If they wanted to do a safety squeeze or a suicide squeeze in a situation, I don't think anyone would be pissed if they did it. It's just a matter of if they don't want to do it because they don't want to risk an injury either. That could be it too. I mean, there's so many moving parts, man, that it's hard to say. But I will say this: I don't think it falls on the hitting coach currently, because a hitting coach obviously is going to continue to do what they need to do to get a guy out of a slump, right, or guys out of a slump. But I don't think that this would fall on them just because they've been in so many games and the mistakes that have been made, if you will, don't necessarily fall on the hitting coach, if that makes sense. I know that there's been situations where a guy's been on second and stuff like that they could have gotten him over. But at the same time, when you kind of play devil's advocate, do you really want to throw a pitcher in a suicide squeeze situation, running full balls ahead, down to first base to get a guy over where he could potentially hurt his hamstring? He could twist an ankle, whatever. So it sucks either way. You know what I mean? Like, it still sucks one way or another because I agree with you. I feel like they're not doing those small things that they should be doing. But as we've talked about before, the game has changed so much. I mean, even Adrian alluded to it, Adrian Gonzalez, when he was on. That stuff has changed so much that even just putting a ball in play is just not, it's just frowned upon now. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but in that situation, I don't expect the pitcher to run fast. I don't expect the pitcher to try to get a base hit there. I'm expecting the pitcher to give himself up for an out to score the run at home. But there's just no attempts to that. And, before we end the show, one last thing that I just want to throw out there to ask you guys is Dave Roberts a little too quick on the trigger with the bullpen? I understand that they had back-to-back bullpen games, but it seems that the fact that he used a lot of relievers for just one inning came back to bite the Dodgers in the ass, especially on Saturday, because they had no one left, after Mitch White. So even if Mitch White was able to get out of that inning, who were they going to throw out in the 13th inning? Could Roberts, and I guess you could apply this to any baseball manager in terms of how they manage their bullpen. But I hate when you run out of pitchers in an extra inning game, and it was only because you were selective with how you used your previous pitchers in the game.
Yes and no. And what I mean by that is Dave has always been in an unenviable position as being the manager of the Dodgers, right? There's always going to be a lot of scrutiny with that job. And as it's well documented, a lot of people have even called for his head with some of the decisions he's made and stuff like that. And he's just in a no-win situation, right? But be that as it may, all things considered, I feel like he managed as well. He's currently dealing with a litany of injuries to his bullpen. And then to add insult to injury, his offense is slumping, right? So you have to find a good kind of fine line, because the other issue is, you want to call up some of these guys from the minors, but they're not seeing game action, so they're not going to be on par with what you would expect them to play like as far as when they get to the show. So I think all things considered, he's managed the bullpen well. Could it have been managed better? Absolutely. But obviously, we're kind of nitpicking at that point because you still have to throw in the caveat of, well, these guys have also been injured, and they're not just like, you lost one or two guys. I mean, how many changes did they make the other day to offset for Brewstar, and then now Dustin and Tony and David and all this stuff. So it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you could sit here and kind of nitpick at it, and I think it'd be unfairly to Dave, because all things considered, he's still, they're still managing to stay in games, and they're not necessarily like getting blown out of the water or anything like that. And most importantly, your starting pitching is what's keeping you in games, and he's managed the starters just as well, I feel like, if any other part of the game. So yes and no, but I think it's unfair regardless, if that makes sense.
I hear you. What do you think, Babyface?
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, we'd be nitpicking. I mean, we're seeing things at the end and be going like, well, why didn't he do this? And when, after the fact, when it does seem like they do have a plan with like, okay, this guy's only going to go one inning regardless. This guy's only going to go one inning regardless. Like we were pointing out like yesterday, like I thought Trinan could have came back out for the second inning because he only threw like 11 pitches in the inning that he came out. But the plan was probably he's only going one inning, and then so that's the plan. Like I said, we'll see it after the fact and be like, well, why didn't he do this? And we're nitpicking that. But yeah, I mean, what he had to do for two games, manage what two games essentially with, as bullpen games, you got to give some credit there, to get through that, and still, having a bullpen that's fairly intact.
Right, but you had a 2-run lead going into that 11th inning, and Vecchio struggled with his control in that 10th inning. If you brought in Mitch White in that 11th inning, in the middle of the inning with the bases loaded, why not just let Mitch White finish the game?
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It seemed like they didn't want to go to Mitch White, and they were kind of, their hand was forced to go him because he was struggling. But yeah, I mean, that's the game that I was telling you. I thought, Trinan should have came out for that inning and closed that game out. But for whatever reason, they had a plan that they had to stick to.
Well, and that's the game, and that's the game planning. I mean, that's literally, I mean, that's it to a T, right? I mean, that's been my complaint personally with the Dodgers, is that they live and die by their game plan. And I'm more of the party of like, if stuff goes sideways, you should always have room or wiggle room for an audible, right? For an injury, or let's say, all these things are not happening as you expected them to happen. But I feel like in some cases, if there was one thing that I wouldn't have picked super hard on, and not even just because of the benefit of hindsight being 2020, is I feel like that they live and die too much by their game plan.
No, I think it's a good point. I mean, I don't know. Just like I said, it was a rough week. They went 2-5, but I think they could have very easily have gone 4-3 this past week if some things pan out for them.
And it could have been worse. If we're being honest, it could have been a lot worse. They could have just been swept out of 2 series consecutively and not here. Obviously, today's game shows otherwise, but I mean, based on kind of how stuff was going, that very easily could have been a thing too. So, I mean, I regardless, when you start the new month and you're only a half game back, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. You can sit here and nitpick whatever, but it doesn't change the fact that you're still only a half game out, and the poor Rockies are already 7 back. So again, we're only the first month into the season, and that very well could, with all the injury woes and all that jazz, it very easily could be way worse than half a game back. And I mean, like who did you have on your bingo card that the Giants would be in second? I didn't, because I expect them to not be good at all.
But I did say at the beginning of the year, watch out for the Giants. I did not expect them to be leading the division, but I did think they were going to be a tough out.
No, and I expect them to be a tough out, but I didn't expect them to be this tough of an out. Excuse me. So it's one of those things where obviously, the only way that you find out what's what is you play the game, right? And the Dodgers have, all things considered, they've played the game, they managed it as best they could, and they're only a half game out. So I'll take that all day. But on that note, as we look ahead, so the Dodgers have 3 against the Chicago Cubs. listen, these three are going to be solid starts because we got Walker Buehler going against Kyle Hendricks, Clayton Kershaw going against Adbert Alzane. I'm sorry, I can't say that dude's name. That guy, by the way, that's the start that I'm looking at, not just because of Kershaw, but because Adbert is he's walked one, and he struck out six in his first quality start, but batters are hitting 114 against him with a crazy whiff rate on a slider. That's going to be a great matchup. And then on Wednesday, Trevor Bauer against as Roger referred to Mr. Arrieta, Primo. That's going to be a good set of three games. They haven't announced anything yet for probables. Looking ahead, Anaheim. I just want to see Mike Trout pitch or hit someone. That's all I want to see. There's no other. Obviously he's going to face Julio at some point. That's going to be a hell of a matchup. It's possible he could face Walker and Trevor. Also solid matchups. And the thing is now is just like, I'm just expecting him to walk up to the plate and just hit a bomb. And it's not fair how good that dude is. But Major League Baseball is not marketing him, and here we are. But that's another riff for another day. But on that note, we'll wrap it up. As always, please follow us on at Dodgers Beat on the Twitter machine, at Bleed Los Pod, and our personal Twitter handles are on the Bleed Los Pod Twitter page. But have a great week, and we will catch you guys next week.
6-0 next week. 6-0.
Oh no, we have to talk about the jinxing thing again. Oh no. So
this is a bounce back week.
Oh no. So just real quick before we end it, we have a running bit, I guess we should call it one.
Yes.
I'm picturing the visual of it right now, and I can't get it out because it's so funny. But Roger has a knack for como se dice, jinxing stuff, but he doesn't believe in jinxes. And who was throwing a no-hitter the other day?
Julio.
No, but there was another one for somebody else. I don't remember who it was.
He jinxed it for the Brewers.
For the Brewers.
He jinxed it for the Brewers.
For the Brewers. Thank you. I just have the visual in my head.
The visual is Babyface is on the Dodgers bus right now, sitting next to Dave Roberts, saying, "You guys played really well today. I think you guys are going to win the next 6 games."
Or my favorite is walking up to Julio. "Hey man, you're throwing real good. I think you might know hit him. What do you think?" And just casually says it that way, and then he has the audacity to say he doesn't believe in jinxes.
Exactly.
But the visual of just, "Hey man, you're throwing the ball great. Like, I think you might know hit him." And
for sure.
But that's what our group text looks like. It's a lot of that and a lot of optimism. And as you know, I am using optimism in a facetious manner. As
we got to be optimistic. What you want me to say? We're gonna be 0-6? No, we got to be 6-0. We got to go 6. We got to shoot for 6-0.
Hey man, you guys,
right? Like we're saying, we got to shoot. We got to shoot high.
You guys had a great series. I think you guys are gonna sweep these guys this next week. That's what's happening right now on the bus on the way to the airport.
And next show that we tape, if the Dodgers do lose every game this week, he will deny that he drank Joe Boo's rum. He will deny it next week.
When it's straight up our fault, 100%. Straight up. But on that note, thank you guys for listening. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And thanks for supporting the podcast. We really appreciate it. But we will catch you guys next week. It's the Bleed Los podcast. We'll see you guys next week.